It is an undeniable fact that more and more fandoms and franchises these days are changing to suit the times, to put it politely. I'd rather say that they are being infected by a virus that is spreading in the West. Ask any sane fan of any pop culture group or aficionado of some film or literature genre how things are going for their respective interests these days, and they will surely say things aren't like how they used to be before, and it's for the worse. A political narrative is more frequently sneaking its way into the media we consume. To be blunt, and I'm sure I'll lose some viewers here, the far left in the West has gone insane and has politicized every franchise and fandom that they can get their hands on, either by banning, censoring, or altering content to suit the current year's political progressive narrative.
Diversity of such a diverse team.
Diverse, different.
Diversity. You're a woman of color as well. Representation.
For the first time.
Diversity and the inclusion.
Numerous creators, writers, or concepts even in franchises, characters, or storytelling concepts have been attacked because to far leftists they are problematic. Each week it seems some new franchise has been altered or infected, I'd prefer to say, and the trend, whether you see it as a good thing or a bad thing, is simply at this point undeniable. The question arises, as it does, when you see your neighbors being dragged off to the gulags for wrongthink, when is it my turn? When are they going to come for Lovecraft and the Mythos? We've all seen the attacks on Lovecraft in recent years, haven't we? Well, I've got a white pill to give you, a reassuring reality. The Lovecraft mythos and Lovecraft's books cannot be cancelled. A bold statement for sure, but hear my reasons out and you decide later on if I'm telling the truth or not. Here are the reasons I believe the Lovecraft mythos is safe, or at the bare minimum, much more immune to the leftist progressive virus compared to other fandoms and franchises. First, the mythos cannot be controlled. If a creator or company, in many cases, owns intellectual property such as a fictional character, let's say Spider-Man, they can decide what happens with that character. They decide the storylines, what he says, what he does, his design, and so on, and that's, frankly, their right. Nobody else can use that character without getting sued to hell, and they call the shots regarding pretty much everything with that character. Also, on which platforms the character may be found.
Type of whack ass shit. Look at this whack ass shit. Like they fucking... Like that was their excuse to try to throw that in there, right?
In the mythos, not so. There is no control over the intellectual property of Lovecraft because Lovecraft is, for all intents and purposes, in the public domain. In our mythos, there is no Disney-like company, I say Disney because Disney owns Spider-Man, which owns Lovecraft or his works. Sure, companies like Chaosium can copyright the Call of Cthulhu in regards to gaming because it is the name of their tabletop RPG, which is fair, I suppose. But the actual Call of Cthulhu, the story, the literature, they cannot. Nobody can. In other words, Chaosium needs Lovecraft. Lovecraft's legacy doesn't need Chaosium to survive. In short, no company can pull the strings in any meaningful way regarding the mythos. No company can decide what is canon or what is not canon in the mythos, or rewrite Lovecraft's stories to edit out whatever they consider to be problematic, and then demand that this new version is the official version, the official canon. Please disregard everything else. No memory holes exist for H.P. Lovecraft's tales. You might say, well then, I just won't buy that media if I find it to be garbage. That's fine, I agree, in cutting garbage out of the media that you consume, but it should be noted that with the majority of franchises there is a top-down system. Top-down referring to the movement of content from the creators to the consumers, basically a one-way street. If the company or creative force at the top decides to shovel progressive bullshit platitudes to you from their top position, all you can do really is sit there and take it and be expected to enjoy it. If you choose to not take it, then, well, your fandom is compromised. What can you do? The company or creators are responsible for producing new content. They own the rights and call the shots. It's a tricky situation. In the mythos, we have nobody above controlling it, no top-down system. New Lovecraft mythos material is made all the time, even since the days of Lovecraft being alive. But it is a meritocracy and open to all to contribute to. No company or creator can tell us what is official canon and what doesn't count. All content added to the mythos is judged by the mythos fans. Anyone can make a game or a movie or a short story about Randolph Carter or Cthulhu or the towns of Arkham or Innsmouth. The resulting product is then judged by us, the Lovecraft fans. If it is good, it will be naturally, and I stress the word naturally, elevated and praised. If it is garbage,
get what you fucking deserve!
The second point is that progressives cannot produce real mythos content. Not even close. Creating cosmic horror, Lovecraftian horror, is not that simple as some other genres. It requires subtlety, sensitivity, and a knowledge as to how the genre works. And I suspect that more than anything, it requires a certain mental disposition which cannot really be learned. Progressive leftists simply are unable to make Lovecraftian content. It's too difficult for them. I'm not saying that if you are lying on the left side of the spectrum that you cannot make a Lovecraft story. Surely it's possible. However, these progressives, these leftists, are so extreme that they are compromised by their own beliefs. They do not have what it takes to do it, and even worse, are hampered by their political desires. As such, what they do create sticks out like a very sore thumb. Talking about Star Wars, you can have an agenda and create films pushing it. The average person, the normie, will go to the cinema and consume it. They hear the opening theme, the crawl of text, see the old characters, and to them, it's Star Wars. It looks the same, familiar costumes, lightsaber fights, starship, sound effects, and so on. It looks like, smells like, feels like, tastes like Star Wars to them. Yeah, some will say, I prefer that older film, while the actual fan with the real gripes will have his or her frustrations drowned out in a sea of normies saying, it's just a film bro, don't overthink it, or, in the worst case scenario, be labeled as toxic. God, I hate that word. But with Lovecraftian horror, forget about it. It's too difficult to make mythos fiction for those unfamiliar with it, and even more difficult for those who have a progressive left narrative to push and who know nothing of cosmic horror. To them, the very human issues of social injustice is a cosmic horror. I'm not joking. And it is this that has become the focus of their tales. Leftist attempts at mythos have always been a joke. For example, if we look at Ruthana Emery's books, where the deep ones are seen as oppressed victims against humanity, and that they are the underclass, and we must see things from their perspective. It boils down what was cosmic horror, a threat to humanity, to all civilization, to an issue about race and oppression. They cannot help themselves but to put their political indignation front and center. It's always like that. The progressives love to subvert Lovecraft's problematic views, quote unquote, and insert their political ideas into the products they create, as if giving the middle finger to Lovecraft and feeling very smug about it. In every case so far, and I mean every, it is the leftist creators' go-to response. They insert human issues, societal issues, racial issues, feminist issues as a result, while missing the most vital point. You cannot subvert the idea of the universe not caring. Trying to put a humanist angle on it, beyond humanity being completely screwed in the big picture, it just fails. It's simply just too far off base, yet they do it every time. The third point is that H.P. Lovecraft is like the mythical creature, the Hydra. Typically when the outrage mob and blue check marks of Twitter
Bunch of slack-jawed faggots around here.
try to cancel something they don't like, they go after the platform that hosts the content or the company creating the product. A clever move in all actuality. An example would be how Parler, the Twitter alternative, lost its ability to function because they were using Amazon's servers, and Amazon's servers were pressured to shut them down. A vulnerability, in other words. Due to social pressure and the ever-increasingly sad world view that it is better to comply and bend the knee than to stand for something, usually companies fold and comply with the mobs and the outrage and issue some meaningless bullshit apology about their devotion to representation or justice or whatever. An example comes from Dr. Seuss as well. Recently, 6 Dr. Seuss books have been removed from publication for what is deemed as portrayals of people which is hurtful and wrong. The people responsible for the cancellation of Dr. Seuss? Well, it's a company that preserves and protects the author's legacy. That's right, the company Dr. Seuss Enterprises, founded by the author's own family, made that decision, and funnily enough, the announcement was made on the birthday of the author.
I feel like I've been stabbed in the heart. How much more betrayal can I take?
This also ties into my first reasoning quite nicely. This company has complete control over Dr. Seuss and that intellectual property. There is no Lovecraft Enterprises which controls and releases his fiction, and that's good. Lovecraft is public domain and thus a Hydra. All his stories are absolutely free to print for everyone. You, yes, you watching this video right now, you could literally create a compilation of his stories and sell them if you wanted to. If one or even more or a bunch of publishing houses decided to bend the knee to some hashtag outrage that may happen in the future, then there are others, even a minority, who simply will not. Statistically speaking, there are just too many publishers of Lovecraft's weird tales. Like the Hydra, unless by some miracle you cut off and cauterize all heads, it won't die. And Lovecraft is simply too profitable for every company to suddenly decide to cancel him. And even if that happened, his stories are free to read online anyway. There's simply no cancelling Lovecraft stories. A fourth point is that Lovecraft fans, by and large, don't care about Lovecraft's worldviews. This is of course all anecdotal evidence. I've been doing this channel for going on about 6 years now, and I've had many people write to me expressing support or just to talk. The countries from where I get messages from are sometimes so unexpected. I've had people from Syria, Guyana write to me, Turkey, Philippines, Ecuador. I can also say that with all honesty that despite the naturally occurring ethnic diversity on this channel, I can count on my hand the amount of comments or messages I've gotten over these years saying Lovecraft is
racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic.
And as an insert ethnic minority, they are offended by him and I should stop making these videos and he needs to be condemned, blah blah blah. I'd wager that the vast majority of Lovecraft fans from all ethnic backgrounds simply don't care that he speaks of nautical looking Negroes, or that his cat was called Nigger Man, or that the Arthur Jemine story was a horror story about race mixing. They don't care, or if they don't like the language that Lovecraft used, or some of the themes, at least they're not going to be so outraged that they stop reading Lovecraft completely and fail to see that the horror in his stories, his cosmicism philosophy, affects every single human being regardless of race, sex, or religion on Earth, and thus they can find personal enjoyment in his tales even if Lovecraft might not have wanted to get close to them, socially speaking. The leftists with their racial politics cannot fathom this. I'm happy to risk egg on my face, and so to all the non-Anglo-Saxons watching in my audience, am I wrong? Even if you find fault in his character, does it hinder your ability to find meaning and enjoyment in his tales as they are written? Would you say that because Lovecraft wrote in his personal letters to others, he needs to be cleansed and purged of any wrongdoings, quote unquote, or any wrong think, or to be rewritten and reimagined from a critical race perspective? Somehow, I don't think so. The fifth point is that there exist those who will just not tolerate this woke stuff. While our mythos has no hierarchy or top-down system, as I mentioned before, there are some figures who stand out. S.T. Joshi is definitely one. If you don't know, S.T. Joshi is essentially the top Lovecraft scholar. If you see a book written or edited by him, take it as a seal of quality. He spoke out numerous times against the outraged mob who attack Lovecraft regularly. Also, there are people today who, if not speaking out against the mob, simply don't play along with them or remain completely apolitical or indifferent to regards to whatever books or games that are being released. And if I dare be arrogant for a second, there's me. I will never bend the knee to the progressives over the Lovecraft issue. They will never convince me that Lovecraft is some sort of monster or an evil man that I have some responsibility to feel disgusted by. I hate them and I will never bend to them. And I also realize that this is why a lot of you like this channel and have even specifically told me in messages that they find this channel refreshing compared to a lot of other channels that cover Lovecraft, because I don't condemn Lovecraft in my videos, nor put it some trigger warning or make the first comment I make in each video that, oh, by the way, he happened to have some racist views. And I know a lot of you appreciate that. If this channel does get shut down one day, and frankly, I wouldn't be surprised, I'd still continue my passion for Lovecraft in other outlets. My passion is not dependent on this YouTube channel or making the videos. It will exist without it, but it is fun making these videos. It would be wise though for me to mention that I have alternative channels, and I'd appreciate it if you could go and subscribe there, just in the worst case scenario. In conclusion, these are my 5 reasons why I think Lovecraft's legacy and mythos is safe from the progressive outrage mob. First, nobody controls the mythos and thus nobody can dictate what we consume. Second, The progressive leftists simply don't know how to make cosmic horror and thus stand out for what they are, and thus hinders their ability to sort of poison the well, as it were. Third, Lovecraft is public domain and his works can never be pulled entirely or censored from publication. Fourth, Lovecraft fans are by far not bothered at all by his views on society, or if they are, they don't make it a deal breaker when it comes to how great his horror is. And finally, there are people in the Mythos fandom who are just opposed or at least won't play along with the progressive leftist ideas. So, am I saying that the Lovecraft mythos is bulletproof? Basically, yeah, kinda. A very bold statement, I know. A big name company like Chaosium or Fantasy Flight may decide to make things that appeal to the social justice crowd. Fantasy Flight has already done some virtue signaling of late. Some big name bookstore like Barnes & Noble may choose to not stock his works anymore. The Necronomicon event that happens every 2 years in Providence, Rhode Island may become a massive safe space and lead struggle sessions that would make even the most ardent Maoist sweat. Hell, the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival is already compromised with the leftist virus. A sad state of affairs can also be seen in the world of Lord of the Rings. The Tolkien Society, founded in 1969 and dedicated to the study and promotion of J.R.R. Tolkien's works, whose president is, in a weird kind of North Korean kind of way, still the long-dead Tolkien himself, whose vice president is his still living daughter, has been infected, to say the least. The seminar that they unironically presented features such speeches as Gondor in Transition, a brief introduction to transgender realities in Lord of the Rings, the problem of pain, portraying physical disability in the fantasy of J.R.R. Tolkien, indigeneity, identity and anti-racism, pardoning Saruman, the queer in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, something mighty queer, destabilizing cis-hetero made-up concept in the works of Tolkien. Thinking of the Tolkien Society makes me turn a wary gaze to another society closer to home and think on the trend of dominoes falling, wondering if this one will fall too. These things can happen, but here is a sincere and heartfelt way to end this video, the final white pill for all of you. The legacy of Lovecraft, his tales, the Cthulhu and Lovecraft mythos, is not defined by what one company or corporation decides is official, nor defined by the products we consume relating to the mythos. Companies and publishers need Lovecraft. Lovecraft was just fine without them. Things like video games or board games are fun things for a mythos fan every so often, or the gatherings at some Comic-Con type event can be a great way to meet like-minded fans, but these things are side benefits to enjoy. The mythos is defined as it always has been, even from when Lovecraft was alive, by the sensitive few around the world who read the stories written by the old gentleman of Providence and truly get what he was trying to convey in his weird tales. Lovecraft freely shared his creations with those sensitive few he communicated with, and thus the Lovecraft legacy was born, and it lived this way even until today. The mythos is that wide-eyed feeling and excitement you get when reading those pages you probably know off by heart at night. The reflective thoughts they evoke as you reflect on life itself. It is the enjoyment of giving a shot at your own weird tale and perhaps sharing it with some like-minded amateur writers, or even just doing it for yourself. As long as we, the true fans of Lovecraft, keep reading, enjoying and adding to the mythos in our own respective ways, be it making our own tales, making a short fan film, creating some video or tabletop game, or making videos on the internet for YouTube, the mythos will be just fine. Cheers.